Good morning, everyone. It is certainly a joy to be with my friend Ann and to be with each of you. We have as our, in our church, we would call it our sermonic hymn, the insert, I need you to survive. And even though it doesn't indicate, we will invite everyone who is willing and able to stand along with the choir and sing with us. By way of introduction, I invite you to listen to me play the song, and I will try very hard to give you the melody so that you can hear how that goes. I come from a church tradition that learns a lot by ear. We sing a lot by ear. So one of my joys was sitting in choir rehearsal and singing by notes because I don't often get a chance to do that. But more importantly, I want to invite you to really feel and understand the words and what it means that there is a gift that we can give to each other in order to, as is said in your mission statement, that we are gathered for the opportunity and the purpose and the strength to be bearers and creators of justice. And so in order to do that, we need each other to survive.
Anne has invited me here today, thank you, to read a poem about long friendship. And my name is Sebree. It's called Canvas Sneakers on Footbridge. My mother thought it was impractical to spend $40 on canvas sneakers. For Christmas, she bought me a pair of Carolina Blues. They sit lined up alongside a few other pairs, worn maybe once, pristine condition, except for the ones I keep in my trunk, faded and speckled with neon paint, white soles rust-colored from cave diving, highland hiking. They still smell like Lake Pawtuckaway. Strand silt stink stuck in the fabric from when I pulled our canoe to the banks, muck squishing between my toes as we walked a half mile into the forest, where I carved our names into a footbridge along with Friends Forever. Years later, people who know me half as well will imagine me in these busted shoes, the same ones I wore on a fog-laden shore when you promised 800 miles hadn't changed us. We both knew you were lying, but I couldn't have loved you more.
Whoops. Whoops. Come on up. We did pretty well.
Yes, it was wonderful.
I'm pretty
It's
happy.
wonderful. Yes.
So, when I was 5 years out of Wilson, which is the college, the women's college that Faye and I attended, Wild Wilson women were in evidence yesterday, the president and board of directors decided to shut the school down. By the end of the second week, at least half the living alums were on campus, organizing, getting ready to go to work. I still don't know why they let us rent the rooms. What I saw there changed my life. There were so many things, but here's one I carry with me. Up to that point, many of us had rather laughingly dismissed what we called the blue hairs, who showed up for reunion. Some of you are too young to remember the blue rinses on white hair, or lavender, or pink. And into this swirling mist, which was manifested as outrage without leadership, came these women. They went downstairs to the snacky, kicked off their heels, hiked their skirts up over their girdles, propped up their feet, and went to work. There they sat, probably 25 of them, sitting around those two coffee tables, cigarettes hanging out of their mouths, working networks, strategizing, and writing checks. It was 1979. We didn't know then. Cigarettes killed, right? But other than heels, girdles, and cigarettes, despite the fact that I have pledged to dye my gray hair red for my 65th birthday, I realized these women were who I wanted to be when I grew up. These were women of purpose, power, and influence in whatever circles they traveled. Whether they ran the local Girl Scout troop, church, chemistry department at a college or law firm, they knew that their connections were as important as their checkbooks. Faye is a good woman. I know that I'm a better woman in her company. I know that she knows things I don't, and if I'm smart, I will listen and lean on her arm when I am uncertain.
First off, Anne, I am already in the stage of dyeing my hair red. And it would have been a bit redder this weekend, except I couldn't get to my barber. And there is a process. You get the shape up first, and then you dye the hair. Otherwise, if you dye your hair and then the barber goes to work, there's like black hair, gray hair, and lines and stuff like that. So trust me, I've learned. And like you, Anne, Wilson College has been pivotal in my life. The courses I took there and the people I met while attending. Yes, I remember the blue-haired ladies that we kind of poked fun at. It was not our finest moment. I also remember the day that I met Anne, and I remember being in awe that a senior would take time to talk to an itty-bitty freshman like me. Now, I wasn't talking about my physical size. I grew up on a farm in a very small town that maybe had 200 people. And there I was moving away from home 4.5 hours and not sure where I would fit in. And then this senior came and sat down and talked to me and welcomed me. That encounter was the first step in my life of becoming, as a gift of Wilson women, wild Wilson women, of becoming a woman of purpose, power, and influence. While at Wilson College, we had to participate in 2 internships while we were there. And during one of those, I was introduced to the Cooley family, who lived in Harrisburg, about an hour and a half away. And although my internship was with Reverend Dr. Cooley at a medium security prison, no less, it was his wife who became chair of my spiritual board of directors, a position she continues to serve in to this day. Now, one thing I learned early from our initial encounter was that you don't have to actually like someone to benefit from his or her wisdom. Because I was talking to someone else, and I was celebrating the fact that I had this nice GPA average in my subject matter. And into our conversation, she interjected, "And what exactly are you going to do with that? How are you going to make a living doing that?" And I was like, who be you? But I learned very quickly afterwards that I was able to turn my distrust of Mrs. Dr. Cooley into an ongoing plea. Can I sit at your feet and soak up wisdom? In one of the worst times of her life, when at the age of 48, she suffered a stroke that left her permanently paralyzed on her left side. But during the times immediately after that stroke, she somehow managed to call me every day for a month to check on me because I was in the middle of a personally devastating situation that threatened to push me over the edge. Or she says, "I was just trying to keep you out of prison because I knew you were going to kill somebody." The Ecclesiastes passage is so true. We are stronger together, 2, 3, or 4. I have the blessing of starting out strong, coming from a family of 12 children, where mom and dad were in charge and set a path of family and faith that continues to this day. Yes, build yourself a board of spiritual directors.
What, you may ask, is a spiritual board of directors? I think each of us needs an advisory board. I think it's particularly important when you're in the religion biz. Perhaps I think that because I'm in that biz, but perhaps we all need this. I need people I can check in with, not only on issues of strategy, but also faith. Faye and I don't share religious doctrine, but we depend on each other to encourage our faithfulness to our own traditions. It is that faithfulness that makes us good associates and accomplices. I have people from many traditions on my board. I get ideas from them, and I also get counseling. I can entrust Faye's comforting hands with my tender heart, nascent dreams, and even my deep regrets. When my sister is dying or Steve's health is uncertain, I can turn to Faye or to any of the other people and say, "Be with me, pray with me." When I am less than I would like to be, I can trust my board to see me through and to prod, goad, scold me into something better.
Give you a good kick in the pants.
That's right. I can't say I've never needed it. But in addition, when I write, Faye responds. If I ask a question, she answers from her viewpoint, and the dialogue I have here begins, but it really continues because it's been an ongoing dialogue now for over 40 years. We are faithful to one another. I know, I don't know how it happened. We're so young. We are faithful to one another and to our growth in both spirit and as well as in practice and observance. Faye is a much more structured woman than I, who isn't. And she puts that structure to work in a way that expresses her faith, the way she lives, the way some of the other people on my board live, pushes me to take both what I believe and the way I live out that belief seriously, and at the same time to carry the responsibilities lightly.
You don't grow up in a family of 12 where there's one bathroom and 4 bedrooms without a bit of structure. In my work life in our public schools, where I've been for about 12 years, I've had the opportunity to meet some very interesting people. And one of them is a gentleman, Dr. Andrew Mecca, who is not on my board, but I follow his writings, and it was actually him who gave me the language of creating a board of directors, because he authored and oversees a mentoring program called Life Plan for teenagers. It is active in several states and a couple of countries, and the goal is to work with young people, especially those who life has dealt them some very severe blow. Another organization that I follow and listen to is Educate Tomorrow, which targets young people aging out of foster care and helping them develop life skills and develop a board of directors. Because frankly, most young people who age out of foster care still don't have a family that they can turn to. Most of us have an Aunt Sally or Uncle Joe that we can count on to listen to us when everybody else is mad around us. They're the ones we can go to and say, hey, look, why don't you think about it from this? And it gives us pause. These young people don't have that. The horror of life in foster care often is that being rescued from bad family circumstances when you're young increasingly puts you at risk for horrible young adulthood. The statistics tell us that for those who age out and do not go on to college, 75% have experienced homelessness in their first year. It was while I was doing research on this topic that I first encountered the term couch surfing. In my service in Salisbury, Maryland at Halo Shelter for Women and Children, 50% of the young adult women ages 16 and 30 have come out of foster care. And let me be clear, not all foster homes are bad. In fact, many of the families that I've met love the children and want them to be part of their forever family. But when you know that your own family could not care for you or did not want you, many of these young people cannot accept love given by these families. I served as a mentor once to a young lady who declared her independence at age 16, moving away from a woman who she later admitted really cared about me, to connect with family members in another state. They told her, we want you to come. We didn't have a chance to get to know you. We love you. And within a week, they had turned her out on the streets to work as a prostitute. Heartbreaking, heart-wrenching. Yes, we need a spiritual board of directors.
It's one of the things that most excites me about our youth group, the way you support one another. It's not easy to grow up as part of a non-mainstream religious tradition. Although most of us pass fairly easily, if we can keep our mouth shut. Less easy. And hopefully you're not able to keep your mouth shut. If we want to raise kids to do anything, it's to speak up. When situations arise in which you are challenged as heretics or pagans, it's important to know who has your back. They should be on speed dial. If they're not, you're missing an opportunity for support. It's also life-changing when you realize you need to step up in school or on the street because someone's being bullied. Knowing you have a posse gives you courage to act for the right. A couple weeks ago, I had to step in and ask a college student to refrain from making derogatory religious comments. I did that because I knew that the people I stand with both my board of spiritual directors and you, my religious community, expect me to try and make a difference. It's really silly because by any way you looked at it, I had the power as an adult. And with this kind of background, I carry a lot of weight. And yet, I was still shaking, and it still made me cry. And if you want to know what is irritating is to be looking at a 19-year-old kid and unable to say what you have to say without crying. Although, and he was aghast that here was this middle-aged lady like bawling at him in a restaurant. I could stop crying because I could come home and touch base with you. Going with Sarah and Hope made it a lot easier to put on a hijab and sit in solidarity with our friends Sonia and company who are being hassled for being who they are. They told us their story about what it was like to live here at 9/11 and not daring to come. One of the women said she didn't leave her house for 2 weeks. Another woman said she went back to class only because her son's 4th grade soccer teacher called her up and said, "Sonia, I know you have class. May I drive you?" And she said, "I'm staying home." He said, "No, you're not. I'll take you. I'll be with you." We need to learn to do that. And I laughed because the 2 photos that were back to back in my Facebook page were Monday, Sarah and me in hijab, and yesterday, Faye and me in our bathing suits in the water. Okay. As the quote says, all our lives we need one another. Faye and I have some obvious differences and some less obvious differences. We have important similarities. One of them is red and black and white, right? And they're odd colors. I know that, and still I wear them rather than even colors. But, really.
I appreciate you.
But the turquoise is an even color, right? I think the most profound similarity for me is that we're both women of faith. Our faiths are expressed differently, or they're differently articulated, right? They're differently articulated, but similarly expressed. We're both women who understand that faith gains meaning as it hits the road. Both of us are involved in our communities in strengthening and helping them grow. When I flag, I watch her and am reinvigorated. I learn from her because we work so differently from each other. I like to hope that we both learn from the way we each think.
When you go to college, and especially a women's college, there's some idiosyncrasies that emerge. And one of them was that if you were going to graduate in an odd year, you had a color, or you had a dinky, and you had some crazy class song and all of that kind of stuff. So my colors were red and black, thank goodness, because those other colors were horrible. And we do learn from each other. This woman's poetic style of writing empowers me. I read her blog Everyday Peace as part of my morning devotions. When a phrase or a concept touches me or challenges me, I write her back. I say thank you, or I say you gave words to something that I could not articulate, or I need to think a little bit more about that. I am United Methodist, but I didn't grow up United Methodist. I grew up Pentecostal. And so for my mom, it was just like, what did I ever do wrong? That my daughter would leave this Holy Ghost inspired, emotional type church and be willing to live and worship in a more sedate manner. Bless her, I love my mom. She never did get over that. But one of the organizations that we have is United Methodist Women. And we are known for tackling some of the problems in our world even before our national church does. And so Ann's words and her vision and her call to community spurs me to do the same. One of our United Methodist Women's initiatives for the next 4 years is intercepting human trafficking in our communities. And we actually have this symbol called Raise Your Umbrellas Against Human Trafficking. And of course, when I first saw that, I said, what does umbrellas have to do with human trafficking? Well, it seems like back in like 1964, there was an underdog team in the Super Bowl, and their coach came up with this defense play called the umbrella defense, which was so different that it actually helped them win that game. And so we've adopted that. And so yesterday and today, there are United Methodist women that have come from across the country and are lining the routes leading to Super Bowl with umbrellas raised. Because unfortunately, we have linked some of our major sporting events with entertainment in the excess, not just the food, but also believing that at this moment in time, we should be able to do whatever we want with whomever we want. And so sporting events are some of the key areas where prostitution and people are brought in under human trafficking to work without pay or for low wages or unfair wages. So we are taking a stance there. Last Saturday, in my little town of Salisbury, we had a conference on human trafficking. And one of the case studies that the district attorney's office brought to us had to do with a man who kidnapped a woman for the purposes of prostitution. So he kidnapped her, drugged her drink, but in her moments of lucidity, she saw some things, and she kept saying to them, says, he took me to a house first before he actually took her to the hotel room, which is where they rescued her from. But it turned out it wasn't a house. She saw paneling, but it was actually a church where this man, who was a deacon, had keys, and that's where he took her to attack her. So an ongoing challenge for me, and perhaps for you, is to accept the possibility of what I don't know is actually true. So to make a difference in issues such as this, I need people on my board with whom I can raise the heart-wrenching and the nonsensical questions. I need people with whom I can have courageous conversations. People, as Ann was saying, who can have my back as I engage with and stand up to those who so vigorously denounce and trounce my beliefs. It is with these people of heart and hope that I can declare, in the words of songwriter Mark Miller, that God will delight when we are creators of justice, joy, compassion, and peace. And my friend, Reverend Pastor Ann, thank you for being my teacher, wonderful, wild, and wise Wilson woman you. And thanks for joining me in the plunge yesterday. You are a true friend.
We'll get back to the Wild Wilson Women thing, and I also wanted to say that there is a program at Transitions, and they have approached me, and they want to come in and speak to us about human trafficking, because we have this great 11 and 15, which is a wonderful conduit for that. In today's sermon, one of the things we agreed to ask one another was, what's the most important thing you've ever said to me? I proposed that because I had a ready answer. Faye came up, as she said, in a Pentecostal church, and at some point she made the decision to become a Methodist because she wanted to be part of a tradition that fed bodies as well as souls. Those were the words I remembered, at least. And those are the words that inspire me and call me out of indolence. That is the rubber on the road piece of faith. It is also a demand that who we believe, demand that what we believe, and in that we do not dare to box in God. Whatever term or notion makes sense to you about the generosity of the world, big G for generosity, we can so easily minimize that. We can make God or nature or human spirit petty and small, or we can allow grandiosity to move us to generosity. We can be those who help others uncover their generous spirits rather than those who shut the world down. And goodness, don't you know that shutting the world down is easy? It's so easy to roll the eyes and say, what are they thinking? Rather than find ways to talk about what matters in a manner that can be, in which we can be understood. As we begin to take one another seriously, we are more easily moved to both understanding and action. When I went to Undoing Racism, there were a few things that moved me. One fundamental thing was a picture of Faye reading to her two cute grandbabies, round and brown in their sleepies. If I love Faye, I have to look at those babies and realize that as they age, they will be endangered simply for being young black boys. Our spiritual connection demands my doing everything I can to build a better world for those specific children, my own great-nephews, and every other brown baby, youth, and man alike. Love and woman. Love and commitment act as our conscience and bring us to conscientiousness.
Trayvon Martin would have been 18 yesterday. And I have a grandson who will be 17 on Wednesday. And if you think that I, as a black woman, as a grandmother, doesn't think how easily that could have been my child, my grandson, or someone I loved, you fool yourself. Because it really, I can't even tell you how much it digs in. So thank you, Ann. One of the most important things that Ann said to me, or did for me, was to trust me with her experience of saying goodbye to a beloved family member. Through her book, A Right to Remember, and her calls and notes, I was able to walk lovingly and clearly beside my favorite brother, who was less than 2 years older than me, in my own home as he transitioned from this life to another, right before his 52nd birthday. When I called Ann in moments of just utter despair, one of the things she told me was to spend time with other people, even as I assumed nearly full-time care for Charles, when the cancer grabbed his bone and spine and left him paralyzed. He was always single. He had no children. And I could not bear to see my very private brother, yes, the 10th of the 12 children, often found it hard to be around all of us. He often didn't come to family gatherings. It was just too overwhelming for him. And so I couldn't bear to have him cared for in a place where by design, and to protect the staff from getting too attached to people who were going to die, that he would be subject to movement and direction from groups of people. We had an ongoing joke. He used to tell me all the time that I had too many friends. He wouldn't understand my driving 4.5 hours to come spend time with Ann. That was just something he didn't do.
It wasn't personal, though, right?
No, it wasn't personal. It was just that you just didn't connect with people like that. He was a lifelong Air Force guy, and he would tell me, you only need 4 friends, and you have 400. So that's way too many. But in the last days of his life, when it was clear that he would need support and help, he told me to build an addition to my home. And he moved from Wichita, Kansas to Salisbury, Maryland, and he would always say, either I get better and go back to Kansas, or I go home to be with Mom, and you'll have that space for your 400 friends. So it became words of love for us. And I remember one day toward the end of his life when my heart was about to break, I scooped up my grandchildren, who were then ages 4 and 9, and took them to a playground. I listened to their laughter. I watched them make friends. And for a brief time while watching them, I talked to Ann on the phone, and she ministered to my heart. Thank you. Love this woman.
Faye is a good friend, not just to me, but a good friend. She's a good friend in the sustaining ways of being a friend, but also in the enjoyment of life. She likes food, she likes to laugh, she likes to think about things. She is a woman with whom I plan to sit for years to come, shoes off, propped up, feet propped up, both solving problems and sharing the pleasure that God is good and life is grand. Now, one would think there would be wisdom as we age, and there is. But somehow, Saturday afternoon, I found myself running over to the registration desk for the polar plunge. "Oh," said Faye, "I've always wanted to do this." Now, I could have let my friend do that without me, but this meant something to her. What kind of friend would I be? So why not go? Let me say to our youth in the back, I have to admit to that sheepish feeling you get when your parents say to you, "So, if your friend suggested that you jump off the bridge, would you do that?" This was never a problem when I was your age. But now I have to hang my head and say, "Yes, ma'am. I guess I would." Wild Wilson women indeed. Apparently, polar plunges are now an annual event. Fabulous. But I have to say, so there we were, standing there, waiting for the ambulance to come back. You get all your stuff off, and then they're like, "Oh, the ambulance is on a call." You're like, "Really? Really?" I have on my swimming suit. Right. But now we're standing here beside somebody who goes, "Aren't you Ann Keeler Evans?" "Not at this moment. No, I'm not." She goes, "I'm from Rabbi Nina's congregation." That's so nice. But then we sat and we looked down the aisle a little bit, and there is Jesus, who was going into the plunge at the same time with us. Although he's wrong about that. He has just a little skinny thing, right? It's like that was a cloak. But anyway. But I said, look, this is the interfaith movement of the plunge. And as I said on Facebook today, 2 Jews, a Methodist, and a UU go into a cold river. My only relief this morning is to know that God is not Elsa singing, "Let them go." So, Miss Faye.
I bless the day when by some great miracle, and I still believe in miracles, I happened to be walking down Broadway. Yes, the Broadway of New York City, which is always like a dual lane. There are like 2 lanes on in a median and then 2 lanes going the other way. I happened to be walking down Broadway on my lunch break from my job with the General Board of Global Ministries and was studying at Union Theological Seminary in the same vicinity. Didn't know that. And there we were, having lost touch after college, not knowing that our lives had brought us both to New York City, and we just happened to be walking on the same side of the sidewalk within the same time frame on Broadway. We walked by each other, and then each of us turning near simultaneously and with astonishment calling the other's name. Faye? Ann? And we have been connected ever since. Ann is on my spiritual board of directors. And you who are blessed to be under her ministry, she's on yours too. What does it require to create a board? Look around. Who are the people that you can call in the middle of the night, and they will awake and listen to you, cry with you, pray for you? Put one of them on your board, and don't be surprised if you only have one that you can put on that board. Some people don't like to be waking up in the middle of the night. Look around. Identify the people who are working hard on justice issues, just like you, who realize that when it seems like the world is going haywire, that one candle held by you and a few other people with similar passion will bring the light of hope. Look around. Identify a frenemy, someone whom you cannot quite call a pal, and sometimes seems to be working opposite of your vision. Keep talking to those persons and find in their words direction for your journey, even if it is to work double time to make sure their friends are not running things. Ecclesiastes 4, chapter 4, verses 9 through 13. Just summary, 2 are better than 1. For if they fall, one will lift up the other. A 3-fold cord is not quickly broken. So build your spiritual board of directors carefully and wisely. Your goal is to be strong so that you can work strong to bring about God's vision and plan for abundant life for all who are on the earth. Be the one to stand with the two to get things done.
Yesterday, when I was writing and I got to this place in the sermon, I had written, when I'd sent this off to Faye, some big finish, in parentheses. But in fact, there is no big finish. There is my quiet gratitude for a friend and a sister in spirit. There is just that endless encouragement to pay attention to the 7 principles. Know them. Know how they impact your life and what they drive you to do. And then to encourage you all to look first to one another and then more widely for the people who keep their traditions sacred. It is a privilege and a joy to work at being the best person you can be. It is a privilege to do that in the company of people who matter to you and who do the same. So pull out that piece of paper and let's sing it again. With this time with meaning. I need you. You need me. We're all a part of God's body. Stand with me. Agree with me. We're all